This is episode number 199 of Life Repurposed, and we're talking about finding your place and feeling at home at church. Do you feel like a refugee or a resident in your current church? Let's talk about the difference here. Welcome to Life Repurposed. This is where midlife meets inspiration, practical guidance, and renewed purpose amid life's evolving chapters. We navigate faith questions and messy, uncertain twists with humor and a commitment to pursue treasure, even in the hard stuff. I'm your host, Michelle Rayburn, the author of books and Bible studies about finding hope in the trashy stuff of life. Have you ever had a moment where you just knew you belonged? Let's talk about finding your place in the pews. You know that feeling when you walk into a church, expecting a warm welcome, but instead you're met with a sense of being on the outside looking in? That's hard. How about if you're looking for a confirmation that you found your place when you're sort of new in a church? How do you know, is this the place for me? Or have you ever had that sinking feeling when you're sitting in the same pew you've occupied for years, surrounded by familiar faces, yet you feel like a total stranger? It's a tough pill to swallow when we don't feel like we belong. But here's the thing. Realizing that you don't fit in at a church you've been attending can be a pivotal moment of self-discovery. Realizing that you have found your place somewhere can also be life-changing. Whether it's because of cultural clashes, theological headbutting, or just feeling overlooked, feeling like an outsider in a place meant for everyone is tough. Maybe it's a difference in values, a shift in priorities, or simply feeling like your voice isn't being heard. Whatever it is, that sense of not quite belonging can hit you at the heart level. I've been following author and speaker Mary DeMuth's journey, and she has specifically focused on people who've experienced spiritual abuse. But the concepts that she speaks of also apply in other ways, even if you haven't experienced spiritual abuse or church abuse. In an April 24 post on Facebook, Mary referred to feeling like a spiritual refugee. And I will link to this post in the show notes. She said, a refugee is someone who leaves a country either because, one, the powers that be have expelled the person, or two, the country has become so dangerous or harmful or full of deprivation of rights and or economics that the person flees. She says, either way, being a refugee means you have left your home, and there is so much trauma to deal with as you navigate your refugee status, finding a new country and seeking to heal from those wounds. Mary said that the one thing refugees need is refuge. She said they need a place to process and heal and tell their stories. They need those to be safe places, and they need to be loved. If you're in those shoes that Mary described, you'll relate to the idea of wondering if you'll ever feel as if you belong somewhere again. For me, the idea of belonging feels like finding a place where I don't have to recoil and withdraw to avoid saying something that might not be accepted there. It's about being able to remove some of the armor and being vulnerable. It takes time to know if somewhere is a safe place. I want you to know that I see you and I understand if you're feeling like a refugee in your church community instead of a resident. Your experiences are valid and understandable, and I want to offer you my empathy. I also want to remind you that you're not alone in your faith journey. God is with you in these times of struggle and uncertainty. You are valued, you are cherished, and you are welcomed here in the Life Repurposed community. Recently at church, I had a moment of belonging that encouraged me. After months of hearing sermons that had been very uplifting and encouraging, and after these months of showing up week after week for worship, I still wondered if this church that we've been attending would feel like home to me. Or I wondered, will it be sort of a detached space of feeling like Mary described, a refugee forever? Is it going to be a place where I feel like I belong, or am I going to be an attender that always feels like the other people belong, but I'm just sort of checking in and out every week? For me, it took a guest speaker invited by the leadership for a specific message, and her message it affirmed me for several reasons. And I don't need to spell them out here because the specific issues aren't relevant at all. Your story is your story. My story is my story. It's something just very specific about the message she shared and how it touched my heart and how there was like this topic that was being addressed and one that might not be deemed popular because of its potential to create unwarranted controversy. And so when she delivered this message, it brought hope to me. It was a little glimpse that I might be finding a place that feels like home. The fact that she was invited there to be the speaker and present that message said a lot to me. And so just that glimpse gave me the opportunity to say, I think I'm feeling at home here. There are some combined factors that contribute to feeling at home in a church community. So I want to look at a couple of those here. I'll just pick 5 and try to combine things in 5. There are a lot of different factors, but the first one that I think is important is inclusive community. This is a welcoming environment where individuals are accepted for who they are, regardless of differences, and this welcoming community fosters a sense of belonging. Along those same lines, embracing diversity within that community and including people of different ages, backgrounds, cultures, and perspectives enriches the collective experience and fosters a sense of belonging for everyone. And so this inclusive community means that we can be different and yet we can come together and feel welcome and feel like we are essentially family. I know that word family has been abused in many church settings, and so I hesitate to actually use it, but we are still the family of God. We are considered brothers and sisters in Jesus. And so I think it is possible for us to be a family, and it is possible for us to have some of the ups and downs that a family would have, but it also has to be founded on this inclusive community. It cannot be an abusive situation where talking about being a family becomes actually a way of using people. And so I'm talking about it in the healthiest sense and not in the abusive sense when I'm thinking about family and an inclusive community. The second thing that's important then that kind of spins off of that is meaningful relationships. Building connections with fellow congregants in your church and participating in supportive relationships creates this sense of camaraderie and belonging. It's like, these are my people. This takes intentional effort. And for someone like me who would rather withdraw than have a lot of superficial interactions, been there, done that circus, it can be difficult to connect. I've learned that I need to have selective vulnerability. That means choosing who has the right empathy and the understanding to be trusted when I feel like I can share what's on my heart. This also means connecting with people who listen well. But it includes practicing being a good listener too. I keep self-care and I keep boundaries in mind when I'm choosing how many connections to have. And so I can be intentional about those things. And I would say that quality over quantity is my motto when it comes to interacting with people. So I'm never looking for a whole ton of meaningful relationships. I'm looking for 1 or 2 usually. And I'm happy if I also have meaningful relationships outside of a church congregation that are just as nurturing and encouraging. So you do you, because what's meaningful to you and what's meaningful to me might be different. The third thing that we think about that helps us to feel at home in a church community is shared values and purpose. Finding alignment with the church's core values and participating in activities that contribute to a shared mission provide a sense of purpose and belonging. Now, this doesn't have to mean agreeing on every microscopic detail, but seeing how shared overarching principles direct the culture of the church and impact the community are what really make a difference for me. Rather than focusing on like doctrinal conformity, it's really about what unites us, and then we foster an openness to learn. We foster an environment where we can question our own assumptions and where we want to grow in our understanding. And this means really cultivating humility and encouraging curiosity because these help us grow in our purpose and connection with others. So as we think about looking at the church environment and shared values and purpose, yes, the church has an overarching mission and a vision, but for me, it's really more aligning with Jesus's purpose for the gospel. And then around that, how we carry that out looks different. And within a church body, it's going to, of course, align with the church values and purpose. But under that, we just look at like, what are our ultimate Christian values and how can we love one another? The fourth thing that we look at is authenticity and support. This is an environment where people feel safe to be authentic and vulnerable, to share their joys, their struggles, doubts, questions, and it promotes those deeper connections and a sense of belonging. In a culture that supports grace, people feel valued and accepted because they can be authentic and they don't have to like have it all together. They can state how they truly feel, state their real experiences. And in the environment of grace, then we are still loved and accepted despite our flaws and struggles and all of those things. We provide mutual support to each other. The fifth thing that really is important here is spiritual growth. Feeling spiritually nourished and supported in our faith journey through those engaging sermons, meaningful worship experiences, those are important. But then outside of that, opportunities for personal growth where we connect with one another. Now, for some people, that's being actively involved in church activities, maybe volunteering, small groups, participating in outreach programs. For other people, it's on a smaller scale. However it happens, it is a spiritual growth allows us to contribute to helping one another, like the iron sharpens iron, and really feel invested in the community because, again, we're pursuing this goal together of becoming more like Christ. Seeking a church community can bring up so many emotions, ranging from excitement to hope and then vulnerability and guardedness. And for many people, the prospect of getting more involved in the church can feel like stepping into unknown territory where deeply personal aspects of faith, identity, and belonging are at stake. There are several reasons for why someone might feel vulnerable or guarded when seeking a church community, and I really want to address those because there is no simple answer when we say, oh, here's the benefit of getting connected with people, and then why do I feel like I don't want to connect? Well, okay, let's look at that then and talk about that because that's a legitimate feeling. Your feelings are valid. So let's take a look at that. First, past experiences can significantly shape our perception of church and community. For those who have encountered hurt, rejection, or judgment in any previous church setting, the prospect of opening up and trusting again can feel daunting. Past wounds can leave us feeling very cautious and guarded, hesitant to expose ourselves to potential pain or disappointment once more. If you've been through it more than once, you're even more vulnerable. We might be questioning ourselves and wondering how we didn't see the problems that came before. Maybe we feel as if we were wearing rose-colored glasses and that's not even in our personality. So where did it come from? How did I not see it? In a world where appearances can often be deceiving, we may crave a sense of belonging that's rooted in honesty and transparency and mutual acceptance. And the fear of encountering superficiality or hypocrisy is a word often used within a church community. It can lead us to approach new relationships with this guarded demeanor because we're wary of being let down or misled. So the process of seeking connections in a church community often involves confronting our own deep-seated questions and uncertainties. It might be about faith itself, it might be about identity, it might be about purpose, or it might be that those grappling with doubts, questions, or spiritual struggles are vulnerable and they don't want to share these innermost thoughts and feelings because it's overwhelming. The fear of being judged, misunderstood, or rejected for our beliefs or for our struggles can lead us to keep that guard up and maintain a protective barrier around our hearts. Recognizing and honoring these feelings as valid and understandable responses to our past experiences and those personal struggles is essential. And it comes from looking at those societal pressures and really, really wanting to fit in. But it's essential for us to recognize and honor our feelings because then in creating a welcoming and inclusive environment where people feel safe to explore their faith and connected with others, we can ultimately find belonging. But we really have to be self-aware. and know how our feelings come into play and how our feelings direct our actions. Why does belonging matter then? Why is it that we have this sense where we want so much to belong? The importance of belonging in a church community cannot be overstated because it serves as a cornerstone for our spiritual, emotional, and social well-being. For me, being involved in a church has been part of my entire life. There's not a time when I can think of that church wasn't the cornerstone. We were there so much, and my own faith has shaped the direction of my life. And so when I think about that, I know that I'm not alone. I know other people have had that experience. I also know that there are people who have not grown up in a church, and yet they have found this stability in a church. And now it's this new thing. It's like the new cornerstone of your life. And anytime something breaks away at that, it's really unsettling because we want this sense of connection and acceptance and inclusion, because that was where our spiritual growth either began or continued and still continues. So in the context of church community, belonging goes beyond just attending or participating in religious activities. It really speaks to the longing of the human soul to be seen and known and valued for who we truly are. Spiritually, belonging in a church community provides the nurturing environment for us to grow and deepen our faith. So those opportunities for worship and prayer and spiritual practices, it really is where we have that relationship with God. It provides us with a deeper understanding of our spiritual journey and how we connect to God. So we're looking for something greater than ourselves. What we're looking for is a vital support network for times of joy and sorrow and uncertainty. A safe place to share joys and struggles and find comfort and encouragement, find empathy and compassion from fellow believers. But for these connections to ease the feelings of loneliness and isolation and alienation that often accompany life's challenges, we need to feel safe. The fear of being judged and misunderstood or rejected for our beliefs or for our doubts or our struggles can create a barrier to authentic connection and belonging. How do we overcome those barriers? Well, here are a couple of strategies for overcoming and really getting to a place where we can build those connections within a church community. The first one I've alluded to already, and it is cultivate self-awareness. Start by reflecting on your own thoughts and feelings and experiences related to belonging and connection. Identify past hurts. Look at your fears, your insecurities that may influence your ability to connect with others in the church community. By becoming more self-aware, you can better understand your own barriers to belonging and begin to address them more effectively. But it also helps you to see where others might be struggling. When we see our own struggles and we don't pretend we have it all together, it also builds that empathy that we have for other people. So ask God to open your eyes. Ask Him, where do I need to explore more? Or where do I need to go really carefully? And where do I need to push myself? The second thing that we can do is practice self-compassion. Be kind and compassionate toward yourself. Acknowledge that it's okay to feel vulnerable or uncertain when trying to connect with others, and give yourself permission to take small steps toward building relationships at your pace. Offer yourself grace and understanding, especially during moments of self-doubt or discomfort. That means you don't have to measure up to what somebody else says you should do. You get to be compassionate toward yourself. If you have come out of that church hurt, then you're going to need extra time for healing before you're ready to just jump in places. If you are somebody who has had some painful interactions and felt rejected for it, it's going to take time to find your people. If you are an introvert and church is just so socially overwhelming, it's okay to be compassionate to yourself. The third thing that we look at is taking gradual steps toward vulnerability. The temptation is to go all in. I've heard people say it's the only way they feel immersed in a community. They just jump into everything and they give it their all, and they tell their stories and they really get to know people and they make a lot of connections with people. And sometimes this leads to hurt. You don't know yet who you can trust. And sometimes they're not very careful with your vulnerable heart. So start by taking small, manageable steps toward vulnerability, such as sharing a personal story or expressing a genuine thought to someone, maybe a compliment to somebody that you admire, maybe sending a thank you note to somebody you admire, or a thinking of you note, or you meet up for coffee or something. But as you gradually open up and you share more of yourself with others, you may find that others reciprocate and they deepen their connections with you in return. And you may find that other people don't. You may find that there is no reciprocation and it can kind of feel like rejection. And that's why jumping all in doesn't always work. So you choose where and when to share and where and when to be an observer for a while. And in the middle of that, take those gradual steps toward vulnerability, but nobody's asking you to tell your whole story up front and be, making 10 new best friends right away. The fourth thing that we can do is seek out shared experiences. Engaging in shared experiences and activities can provide natural opportunities for building connections, and it really grows that sense of belonging. It allows things to happen more naturally, and at the same time, it allows us to be open to different perspectives and beliefs and opinions. And this is good because when we share some experiences, we are also going to discover we have some differences. We might have a lot in common, and if we set it up as if we're looking for the perfect friends, the perfect connections, we might have a little checklist in our mind of the person needs to think this way about this social issue and this way about their theology and they need to love to drink coffee. And, you have like this little best friend checklist or something. I know this isn't about best friends, but sometimes that's what we go into church looking for. Like we're going to find a couple that we can really hang out with. And all of a sudden you realize, oh, they checked all the boxes, because we know what that phrase means, except for this one. Now what do we do? Well, in our church community, we're probably going to meet a lot of people that don't check all the boxes. And so we're going to need to learn how to have grace for one another. And those shared experiences help us to find something in common. So it helps us to have the relaxed things that fall in between the things that are a little more tense. Okay, the fifth one here is to practice active listening. Listen attentively to others when engaging in conversations or group discussions. Show genuine interest and empathy by asking follow-up questions, offering validation, or demonstrating empathy for their experiences and perspectives, but without one-upping them, okay? Active listening is not listening to see where we can insert our own stories and then talk about how we also went through. No, we're talking about empathy here. So we are also listening for where we can be encouraging to somebody. And we're listening for clues that might indicate red flags and warnings. Sometimes when we desperately want to belong, we tune out the ability to see or hear the problems, and we choose to overlook some warning signs that could save a lot of hurt. And so active listening helps us not only to practice empathy for others and make those natural connections, but it also can be very helpful for us in knowing where we want to just be a little more cool and where we want to be a little more cautious in making connections that could become a problem later. Now, all of this is about finding a balance because there's two poles here, that polar opposites. There is the one of possibly allowing ourselves to become cynical and say, well, I'm never going to find a place where I feel like I belong. Or the other end where we have ultimate optimism and we miss the cues. Okay, so we're trying to land in the middle somewhere where we find a balance between having a critical eye and being aware of some things, but also continuing to press forward with hope and know that there is a place for everybody to connect somewhere. Some of you might find yourselves caught between those glimpses of hope, and yet you're hesitant to get your hopes up too high because you're uncertain about your next steps. And maybe you're yearning for contentment while you're waiting for God's guidance. It's important to remember that you're not alone in your journey. The path of faith is often marked by moments of uncertainty and waiting, and it's okay to embrace these seasons with some patience and to have trust and hope that God is still at work. During this uncertainty or doubt and waiting, Finding belonging and purpose in a church community can feel like a distant dream. Yet, even in the moments of hesitation and indecision, there is hope to be found. We can embrace the present with gratitude and mindfulness, and we can find contentment in the simple joys of life while trusting in God's timing and plan for the future. Amid doubt or indecision, it's possible to find comfort and solace in the present moment. Take time to appreciate the blessings and opportunities that surround you, whether it's the support of loved ones or moments of joy and laughter or the beauty of creation. Embracing the mystery and uncertainty that come along with our journey to belonging is okay. Sometimes the most profound moments of growth and transformation occurred during the periods of waiting and unknowing. So trust that God's at work in your life, even when those steps are not clear, and then have faith that He will guide you in His perfect timing. I encourage you to hold on to the glimmers of hope and continue to pursue the belonging that you have wanted. Allow these to be beacons of light during those times of uncertainty, and remember that God is faithful. As you wait for Him to move and to reveal His next steps, continue to have those conversations with Him in prayer, trusting that He will lead you forward when the time is right. There really is no perfect journey. All of us have different steps, different paces along the way. I encourage you not to give up hope if you're still trying to find your place. It might not be in the church that you're in right now. You might come to that realization of knowing you're going to need to look elsewhere. And when I think about the post that Mary DeMuth put up, she had talked about the fact that when she was thinking about being a refugee, that there are some people who go and there are some people that stay and feel like refugees right where they are because they no longer have a sense of belonging. And so they're kind of waiting for the next step from God. Like, do we move on from here or do we stay here? And so I'm just saying that because every one of us has a different place we're in. Some listeners right now are very content and you have a strong sense of belonging right where you are. And if that's the case, I encourage you to pray that God would first send you somebody who's really struggling with trying to find their place, but also just praying in general for people. If you don't know somebody who's in that, I will assure you that there are many people who are feeling that. And so you can pray for the people who are discouraged and who are seeking a place to belong. And just know that God will maybe put somebody in your path that you can encourage. So for those of you who are waiting for that hope, this is your word of hope, that God sees you, that I see you, and I will be thinking of you and praying for you along that journey as well. Now, before you go, I want to give you an update about the Life Repurposed podcast. This is episode number 199. And after this episode, we're going to be moving to Substack. Now, on your end, it's probably not going to change at all. If you have subscribed on your favorite listening platform, what's going to happen is I'm going to create a link that allows the show to continue to come in there just the same as usual. But if you notice that we don't have an episode for a little while, it's because after episode number 200, I'm going to take a little break. And what I'm going to do is work on updating all the links on the website and in the show notes for the podcast. I'm also going to be resharing some of the older episodes on Substack, along with some new blog content about it. It has been over 5 years since the Life Repurposed podcast started. And so there's a lot of content out there. And I even have new thoughts on things that I podcasted about 5 years ago. So there will still be some periodical episodes of the podcast. Periodic. I don't know. I'm an editor. I should know these things. But anyway, it won't be as regular during this break time as I'm working on just kind of restructuring things. I'm also working on writing some new content for a podcast for aspiring indie authors. And so I'm going to be giving that some focus to record some episodes for that. So all that to say, be sure that you're following on Substack so that you get an email whenever there's a new episode or blog post. So even if you're listening on your favorite listening platform, I post other content on Substack. It's a blogging platform that also emails you whenever a new post goes up. So if you have topics that you'd like to see covered on the show, or maybe in a blog, there will be opportunities there to chat about topics. I post some different thoughts and links to articles, other people's content, links to little snippets from that. So when you follow along on Substack and you even get the Substack app, then you get links to some content and notifications when new things go up. And so it's kind of like a little social media blogging, podcasting, chat platform all in one. And so it's a really great place for us to connect. So I encourage you to follow that. You will find that at liferepurposed.me, like me. That's just a shortcut link to get you to that Substack page. So I don't have to give you a long URL to get there. So I want to thank you for being with me for 199 episodes if you've been listening from the beginning. If you selectively listen to topics in the podcast, I do that all the time with the podcasts I listen to. So no offense here, because that's how we listen to things. But I just want you to know that I do appreciate when you listen. And I also appreciate when you tell your friends. When you hear something you think somebody else would be encouraged by, I love it when you share it with them because it really helps grow my reach and also helps me to connect with new people. So this is my big thank you, and I will be back next time with episode number 200 of Life Repurposed. Thanks for listening to Life Repurposed. Would you like more? Check out the Life Repurposed magazine on Substack and get resources, weekly musings, and conversations with others. Just go to liferepurposed.me.